Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. This video is going to be my review slash recap on Roots. On Roots. So I did watch it. They put the first episode up on the History Channel. Well, they put all the episodes up on the History Channel, but the first episode is the only episode that you can watch, like for free or whatever. And then the other three, you have to either have, you have to have like a pass code, have cable, whatever. But I did watch them. To me, so shout out to the person that assisted with that. I did watch them. I absolutely love them. I thought they were so good. I took really extensive notes, like extremely extensive notes. So I don't think I'm gonna do a recap as in like I piece by piece recap everything that happened. I don't really want to spoil too much. Like I take extensive notes. I'm talking about like individual scenes, dialogue, like breakdowns. But for people that haven't watched it and want to watch it, or want to experience it, or I don't really want to like get that in depth. So I'll probably just do like a general recap maybe of what happened and my thoughts. So it was 4 parts, 8 hours in total. I really don't think I can do all that in one video. So I think I'm gonna do it in parts, maybe like 1 part for each video. So that would be 4 videos. So yeah. So I'm gonna say that overall, the number one thing that stood out for me in watching Roots in its entirety was the parallels to today. And I know a lot of that was intentional, like a lot of that and a lot of the type of language that was used and the way the scenes and the scenarios played out was intentional. But I also think a lot of just so much of what we see now in terms of race and race relations and the things that are going on in this country and the way that Black people are treated in this country, is basically seeds that were sown during slavery, ideas, ideologies, attitudes, again, seeds that were sown during slavery that have now kind of like grown into these like huge trees of thought processes and ideas that we still literally see today in 2016. So it's just very funny, because you hear people say like, oh, like that type of like racism doesn't exist anymore, for example. And then you like watch Roots and it's like, I see a clear parallel. Like I see a clear line. Like even if you're trying to say like, oh, like this certain type of point A racism doesn't exist, this point B racism exists, and you can see the clear line between them. You can see the clear parallels between where these ideas and these thought processes came from, and they go back to slavery. And again, people love to like, oh, like slavery doesn't matter, and again, fucking history doesn't matter and the past doesn't matter, and us sitting here right now having this conversation is completely cut off from any type of context or any type of relationship to the past, even though the very fact that we're sitting here right now speaking in English, has something to do with the past, has something to do with the way that you were raised, the way that you were brought up, where you went to school, all those things contribute to the person you are right now at this moment. And yet when we start talking about race relations, all of a sudden none of those things matter. Everything that we know about, the creating of human beings and personalities and societies just like flies out the window. And we are sitting here in this moment of time magically through, spontaneous combustion. So it's really, really interesting to, see this historical fiction, because that's what it is. But see the clear parallels between what's happening now in fact, not fiction, factually. So as I probably move through my recaps, there are going to be things that I want to pinpoint specifically, like, oh, this from slavery times is related to now in this way, So so episode 1 opens in Jufure, which is where Kunta Kinte is from. That is his village. And he's Mandinka, and his specific tribe, villagers, they're like Muslim horse wranglers, traders. They like deal with horses. And he's like really, really good with horses, right? And this is something that we see brought back up after he's captured and he's a slave, this relationship and this kinship that he has with horses. So the whole entire first half of the episode takes place in Jufure, and it was just really amazingly well done. For all of y'all that are out there talking about like, oh, boycott Roots because the way that they depict black people, just watch episode 1. Even if you only watch the first half of episode 1 and then you turn it off as soon as like Kunta gets shipped to America, like at least watch the first half, you know, the first hour or so of episode 1, because it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's just like really lush and rich and beautiful and really painstakingly done. We see a lot of world building. We see that, you know, Kunta Kinte is a person. You know, he had a home, he had a family, he had a village, he had a life, you know, and we see the cultural customs. You know, they really go out of their way to provide us with this snapshot into this really just rich, again, tapestry of culture and the way that they do things, and the way that they do things with the naming ceremony, which we see is something very important and very, you know, much reoccurring throughout the series. But not even just the naming ceremonies, you know, just all types of ceremonies that, again, I don't want to go too in detail because I don't want to ruin it, but all types of ceremonies that lead, you know, kind of up to adulthood, and we see the way that they live, and we see them joking around and laughing and playing with each other and flirting, and, you know, we really see a healthy, happy people that are from somewhere. They are somewhere, right? Because one of the great tragedies of slavery is that it cut us Black Americans off from the fact that we came from somewhere, you know. So it's really amazing and important that they showed this, and that they clearly dedicated so much time and energy into portraying this. Like, the costumes were amazing. The music was just like amazing. It was wonderfully cast. Malachi Kirby was awesome, amazing, with this kind of like feisty take, you know, on Kunta Kinte. LeVar Burton wasn't really feisty, you know. He was kind of more like sweet. And we also see like Kunta's sweet side. Malachi Kirby does still show his sweet side, but he's like much more like on it, like, yeah, like, I'm that nigga, like, you know, really, really on it. And, you know, y'all want to fucking boycott and protest and, you know, start fucking petitions, like, start a petition for a whole series on Jufure, because I would definitely watch that. Again, if you only watch the first half to the first hour of episode 1 just for this depiction of blackness, the way that clearly so many people, so many of you want to see it, they do show it. Like, the series doesn't just start with him in chains. Like, they do show, you know, this life, this culture, this village, this person that he was, you know. And again, the world building is so complete that the break between Jufure and America is like severe. It's like almost, the opening is really almost like a series within a series, you know. So definitely watch it. Definitely watch it. So we see when Kunta Kinte is born, we see the day of his birth, and then he goes through the naming ceremony, and he takes Kunta out, just him and the baby, at night, and he presents him up to the stars, and he says, you know, you must hear your name first. Your name is your shield. You are Kunta Kinte. You must always honor your ancestors and, you know, behold the only thing greater than you, which is the sky, but not just the sky, the stars, but not just the stars, the ancestors, the history, and, you know, what came before you, and you are them and they are you, and this is your name, and it's you, it's your personhood. So it's really instilled upon us from the beginning the importance of names and identity and history and knowing where you come from and ancestry and legacy. And I feel like they really wanted to push that to make it even more impactful, the realization of how race-based chattel slavery, how the transatlantic slave trade stripped that away from us, you know, because that is a privilege. And again, like Sankofa, is, you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been, you know, if you don't know your past, like a person without a past is just like is a lost person, because like I said in the beginning, people love to act like the past doesn't matter and everything we're doing and seeing exists within a vacuum and there's no context and nothing from the past affects us in any way. But it's like, no, everything, it's like a domino effect. Everything leads up to the person that you are sitting here right now, including your past, your history, your family, your experiences. So how tragic and violent, what an act of violence to cut people off from that and to give them these, new names and to kind of force them into this situation. It's very clearly made from the start, how much of a violation American slavery really truly was. And we watch it unfold, not in this like abstract, because a lot of the conversations we have about slavery are really abstract. And that was always, the power of Roots, is that it's not abstract. Where we see a person, we see this person's family, we see their friends, we see how they grew up, we see their home, we see what they want to do with their lives. There's a scene where Kunta says he wants to go to university, he wants to leave Jufure and go to university in Timbuktu and test himself against the best minds and the best students in the world. And, it's not just like abstract, like, oh, slavery. People, these are people, these were persons with lives and histories, and Roots makes it very specific, makes it very close. And that's also some of the power of why it should be made and why it should never be forgotten. And they want to fucking remake it again in another fucking 50 years for another new generation. I will be all for it because it's very important. It's an extremely important narrative, in my opinion. But yeah, so again, we open in Jufure, we see all that, it's amazing, it's wonderful. Kunta gets kidnapped, and then we see him in the hold of the ship. They also have women on the ship as well, and there's some really, really, really interesting dynamics at play when they actually try, and there's a scene where they actually try and overtake the ship, and they're speaking in their own language, and they're basically, so the slave owners, the ship's crew, a couple times a day, they like bring them up and like get them moving so that their like muscles don't atrophy and they don't get sick and die, because they want them to make it alive, even though millions upon millions of slaves did die in route to America. Millions upon millions of Africans did die en route to America. But they basically get them out, they get their blood going, they force them to eat, they're like, we are going to get a certain amount of money for you, so like we need to, like, you have to make it type shit. And when they go up and they like dance, and they like, because they make them like dance and move, just like move like this, and they're singing, and these like white people, these Americans don't know what the fuck they're saying, and they're talking over, so there's this wall, and so it's like all of the important shit on the boat, like the wheel and what is that wheel called that you used to steer the ship? It's not called a wheel, right? Whatever. The wheel is back there, and like all the important shit is like back behind this wall, and there's like a door. So like they kind of hatch this plan to like get past the door and like seize the ship. And there's this girl, Jenna, who Kunta was in love with in Jufure, and she has also been kidnapped. And the captain has been like routinely like raping her. She's like his like little favorite to rape. This series does not shy away from rape, which I think is really, really, really important, because the New York Times ran this article recently about genealogy and about DNA. The DNA pretty much of your average African American. So your average African American in this country right now in 2016 has 17% European genetic material, DNA, blood, whatever you want to call it, 17%. Now that's your average African American. So that's somebody like me. I have 2 black parents. I have a black immediate family. I have a black extended family. I don't have a white immediate relative in my family, but I still have probably on average about 17% of European blood, which is a lot. And these are holdovers from slavery. These are holdovers from rape. These are holdovers from, they raped their way into us basically. And this is a series that does not shy away from that. The New York Times article also said that, on average, the majority of the European DNA in African Americans is from white males, because your average African American also has this really specific chromosome, this genetic marker that is passed down through African women. So most of the European blood in us is not from white women, it is from white males who raped African women, who raped their slaves, who forced them to breed, which is another thing that we see kind of repeated over and over in this series, is like breeding and like, I need my stock up, and like, this idea of a black woman as breeding material, and I thought it was, again, really important that they do not shy away from that. They don't sugarcoat it. They don't gloss over it, because that's something that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for people to watch and for people to deal with, but like, you have to fucking deal with it. So they make this plan to get through the door when the captain opens the door to bring the girl Jenna into the back so that he can basically rape her. And we kind of see the men and the women really coordinating, and again, they're coordinating, they're speaking their own language, they're pretending they're singing the song, like they're dancing and they're pretending they're singing the song, but really they're coordinating back and forth, because the women are on that side of the wall, because they're washing the clothes and like they're cooking the food. They're on that side of the wall, so they're telling them like, this is where this is where that is, at this time this happens, at this time that happens, and they're basically plotting it. And then the moment arrives, and I'm not going to tell you guys what happened, but the moment arrives, and we really see that play out. And again, it's just really interesting dynamic. Like, the men are chained; they're chained to the deck. One of the women comes, she's carrying like a basket, and she comes and walks by, and she discreetly puts an axe down so they can break the chains. This very much this working together of black men and black women together. And I always say this, we need each other. People love to oh, and I hate black men and I hate black women and I hate this and I hate that. And it's they are you are them. From day one, we've had to work in tandem to survive, and that shit has not changed. So all the rest of that shit is just noise. It's just bullshit. And this was a really interesting display of, black men and black women, again, working together in tandem to fucking get something done. And I thought that was really, 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 really powerful. Really powerful. Extremely powerful. So they get to America. I'm going through it quick. So they get to America, and Kunta's examined, which every time I see any type of examination in a slave narrative, it's just horrific. But it makes me think of football. It makes me think of basketball. It makes me think of, collegiate sports. It makes me think of, the way that even now our bodies, especially black male bodies, are looked at a certain way in terms of strength. And how much money can you make me? How much money can I make for your body? Oh, and they look at your teeth and look at your muscles, and they look, and they look at, they're looking at you a certain way, not like a human being, right? Not like a human being, as a thing, right? And even now, still, like I said, this is something you can really see even still replicated in sports, which is just a whole other thing, right? But so, he looks him over. He's oh, he's young, he's healthy, his teeth are good, muscles are good. I'll take him. So he buys him, and another slave, so his name is Samson, comes and hauls Kunta away and puts him on the wagon and prepares to take him to the farm. And Kunta just cannot understand. He's just what are you doing? He recognizes Samson's features at one point, and he's you are well off, I'm a Mandinka, we're allies, why are you doing this to me? We can escape together. And the guy Samson's no Guinea man talk. He says Guinea man, which is a really specific racially charged term, right? He says no Guinea man talk, just Virginia talk. And it's here right here in the very first episode, we have a clear-cut example of a colonized mind, right? Of a 1700s version of respectability politics, right? Which is exactly how I said that a lot of the seeds that we see sown, you know, during slavery times have grown into these like trees now. You know, someone, you know, a black slave telling an African, you know, a Mandinka, speaking his own language, no Guinea man talk, just Virginia talk. I don't want to hear your, you know, that kind of talk. That is Guinea man talk. That is poor talk. That is, you know, that is, what is the word I want? Native talk. We don't talk like that. We don't talk like that. We don't talk like that, Ebonics. Okay? We don't sag our pants like that. All right? We don't wear our shoes like that. We don't wear our hair like that, okay? We have to be respectable, right? And we have to talk in Virginia talk. And we have to wear our hair in a we have to comb our hair and wear it in a respectable way. And we have to dress a certain way. And we have to carry ourselves a certain way, otherwise massa won't like it. And here we are in 2016, and again, these same ideas. This is shit we're still trying to get over. Trees that we're still trying to cut down from seeds that were sown during slavery. And, you know, again, that was one of the most really powerful and jarring things that I noticed while watching Roots. So they get to the farm, the Waller farm. It's in Virginia. Kunta just can't understand, like, what the fuck? Like, there's so many of y'all. There's, like, one overseer and, like, 20 black people out in the field. He's like, why don't you guys overpower him or try to run away? And repeatedly over the course of this episode, Kunta tries to get away. He tries to run away. He gets out the wagon. He tries to run away. He tries to run away from the farm repeatedly, multiple times, you know. And he just has this, like, spirit of, like, well, I'm not going to be here. I'm not going to be here. And one of the first white people we see is the overseer. And the overseer says, from the very first time that Kunta runs away, he says, you can't buy a slave. You got to make a slave. You know, 100% true, mind blown. You cannot buy a slave. You cannot just buy a person and tell them they're a slave and they'll just say, oh, okay, I'm a slave now. You have to make a slave. You have to intimidate them. You have to intimidate them through violent tactics. You have to beat them. You have to chain them up. You have to rape them. You have to deny them food. You have to force them to work in the hot sun. You know, you have to kill them, right? Again, these are tactics we still see play out in 2016. What do you think they're doing when they shoot Mike Brown in the street and they leave his body there for hours and hours and hours? What do you think those intimidation tactics are? That is making mental slaves of the people around. So now he's an example, so the rest of you niggas, y'all not gonna talk back to the cops the next time. When the cop tells you to get your ass out of the street, when the overseer tells you to get your ass out of the street, when the overseer tells you to get your ass back in that field, you're going to go next time. You're not going to say shit next time because we left Mike Brown's body out there. Those are intimidation tactics. We're going to beat you. We're going to keep you living in these poverty-stricken communities. We're not going to give you jobs. We're not going to give you opportunities. We're going to make it so you're living in these food deserts. These are all, again, seeds that were sown during slavery that we're really reaping now, that we're still seeing now. You cannot buy a slave. You've got to make a slave. And people are still slaves, mental slaves, and they're still trying to make more mental slaves every day using 2016 versions of these same exact tactics to colonize us mentally. But just like you were made a mental slave, you can be unmade a slave. You can be unmade a slave. And that kind of brings me to Fiddler. Fiddler is Forrest Whitaker's character. We find out in this version of Roots that his real name is Henry. That was not in the original, and I don't even believe that was in the book. I kind of feel like that was added to give him more of a sense of agency. There's a lot of like additions in this version of Roots. It's really a modern retelling, a huge update. And that brings me to Fiddler. So when we first meet Fiddler, he's kind of like the pet of Massa Waller. He's of the wife of Massa Waller, Elizabeth. He's like her pet. So he like plays the fiddle, he like plays the violin, and he's like dressed up in these like fancy like Victorian era English clothes, because this is pre-Revolutionary War. So yeah, 1700s. Pre-Revolutionary War, so this is like 1700s, and he's like dressed up in these like very fancy like European clothes with this like fucking wig on, this like George Washington straight wig on, and he just wants to like be fancy and like play his fiddle for these white people, and and he doesn't have to work in the field, and he says at one point, like I'm not going back to the field. I have a nice place at the foot of Miss Elizabeth's bed, like a hound, like it's warm. I get to sleep in her nice warm room and like play her to sleep, and like my whole existence on this farm like revolves around like pleasing this woman, and like thereby I have this like nice cushy existence. 2016, you have these same people, the Don Lemons of the world, the Pharrells of the world, the Commons of the world, the Rizzes of the world, people that know what it's like to be out in the field. They do know what it's like to be out in the field, and they know what it's like to be a hound at the foot of Miss Elizabeth's bed, getting a pat on the head for being a good nigger. And it's like, I don't want to go back to the field. I don't want to go back to the field. I want to stay where I'm at, where it's nice and comfortable. So whatever I need to do to make this white person comfortable so that I can maintain this position as the hound at the foot of her bed, getting my pat on the head, so I don't have to go back out into the field, I will do. Same ideas still perpetuating now. But again, just like you can be made a slave, you can be unmade a slave. So Kunta Kinte is assigned to Fiddler as kind of like, oh, so Kunta Kinte is going to be like your project. So like you're gonna train him, break him, show him the ropes, teach him English, because at this point Kunta Kinte knows no English. He doesn't understand what the fuck's going on. Like he's going to be like your charge, basically. And Fiddler's like, what the fuck? Because he already knows, like, if I fail with you, they're going to like send me away. Like, they're going to send me even further south to, like, a harsher farm where they don't give a fuck about the fact that I played this fiddle. Or they're going to, like, put me back into the field. So, like, listen, you have to, like, get your life, Kunta Kinte. But what ends up happening is kind of the reverse. So while Fiddler does teach Kunta Kinte English, and he does pretty much educate him in, like, what's going on, Kunta, who is Mandinka, also kind of has an influence on Fiddler as well, and they become very close, and Fiddler essentially becomes Kunta Kinte's surrogate father. And there's a very powerful scene with this specific piece of music that we see over and over throughout the series. It's a lullaby that Kunta's mother sang to him as a child, that, you remember the songs your mother sings to you as a child. So Kunta, like, holds on to this song and sings it, and he ends up singing it to his daughter Kizzy, and it ends up getting passed down. And there's a scene where Kunta is singing the song and Fiddler remembers it, and it hits him so hard, and he starts to cry, and he's like, what is that? Like, what is that? What are you singing? What are you humming? I swear when I was just a little boy, my mother used to sing me that song. My grandmother used to sing me that song. And, there was a man on our plantation that used to play a guitar. And Kunta's like, it's not a guitar. Like, it's an instrument from where I'm from Africa. And, again, Kunta's influence on Fiddler is kind of like, it wakes him up. It unplugs him from the Matrix. It wakes him up, and there's another scene where Fiddler says, like, I thought I had me, like, a nice life carved out here. Like, how did I let these, like, white people get to me? Negro motherfucking wake-up call, Like, these people trick themselves. They fool themselves into believing, that they have a nice little life carved out, and that, and they're new black, and, all that race shit doesn't matter anymore and doesn't affect them anymore. They let being the hound at the foot of somebody's bed get to them and kind of lull them into this false sense of security, which is another theme that we see come up again later on with Chicken George. But I'm not going to get into that. That's going to be, next video. But so basically Fiddler kind of like teaches Kunta Kinte about everything that's going on. He teaches him English. He gets him acclimated on the farm. But Kunta keeps trying to run away. He keeps wanting to run away, and he refuses to accept the name that Elizabeth Waller the wife gives him, which is Toby. Now, the scene where she gives him the name Toby I thought was really interesting because they see that Kunta Kinte has this way with horses, right? And she says, I used to have this like wild stallion, and one of my slaves taught me how to sit astride the stallion to ride him rather than sit side saddle, which is the English, the European way for like a proper lady to ride. And she says, so I'll call him Toby. And then they say like, oh, like for the man or for the stallion? And she says both. So there's like some really sexually charged language, some double entendres about stallions and black men as stallions and learning to sit astride a stallion, and that's something that I feel like we really don't talk about enough and we really don't get into enough. There's really just not enough discussion around the rape and fetishization of black men by white women, and the fact that white women viewed and still view black men as beasts, animals, sexual deviants, predators, that in their jungle fantasies that they want to be ravaged by, but then in their fears and their realities, they're afraid of that he's going to rape me, that he's a predator, that he's following me, that I have to clutch my purse, that Dylan Roof, and they have to die because they're going to rape our women. And there's really not enough conversation about that. So I'm really glad they included that scene, but it's almost like it's a quick scene. It's a quick scene. It is there, but it's very quick. It's almost like a blink and you miss it, and it's like, oh, but like I know what the fuck they're talking about and that they're implying there. So I was glad to see that. I thought it was a really important scene because again, that's just something that we don't talk about enough, is the predatory behavior of white women. So Kunta's having like trouble just like accepting. Because who the fuck can accept slavery, right? And Forrest Whitaker as Fiddler, they basically like hatched this plan, right, for Kunta to get away. So Forrest Whitaker learns this piece of music, this lullaby, and he says, okay, well, they're having a party on Christmas Eve, so I'm gonna play this lullaby, I'm gonna play the music. And when you hear me playing the music, then that's going to be your cue that, like, everybody's preoccupied, that, like, Master's not paying attention, the overseer's not paying attention, and you can go, and you can, like, run. So we see the scene of Fiddler playing the music. Oh, and the white people love it. They love it. Oh, it's a song they've never heard before, and they love it. And then by the end of the series, this is a piece of music that is played all throughout the South by all the bands, and they have no idea where it came from. And, and again, there's this idea, there's this nod to how Africans created American culture, like how we so heavily influenced and impacted American culture. And I said this on Twitter one time. I was like, Black Americans been influencing white American culture since songs sang in the field found their way into the white churches and found their way into the white bands and found their way into the white orchestras. Cultural appropriation that is still happening again to this day, because what are we doing? We are reaping the seeds that were sown during slavery. This idea that, oh, this black person doesn't own it, so I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to do whatever I want with it. It has a deeper historical meaning and a context, and it's levels. It's a lot of levels to the things, again, that are happening now. None of this shit is just happening. Oh, it's just happening, and oh, it just happened. Like, none of this shit just happened. It all has meaning behind it, and it all has context, and none of it happens within a vacuum, And again, that was really the main thing that I got watching Roots, was just like, all this shit is still happening right now, But so Fiddler plays the piece, and Kunta runs away, and he gets caught. The next day, Christmas Day, they find him. They have the dogs after him, and the dogs basically, they get your scent and they chase you down. And I've like read accounts of like them letting dogs like rip slaves to pieces. I've never seen that portrayed in a slave narrative on TV or in a movie, but I have heard about that. So I was wondering, like, if they would show that in this kind of modern retelling, but they didn't show it. They just had the dogs chase him down, and they took him back to the farm, and then they had like the famous whipping scene where they whip him until he accepts the name Toby, which is just as horrifying as it is in the original. Where they break him. They violently beat him until he accepts this name, And someone, I saw a tweet, because I was going through the Roots hashtag, and somebody tweeted during that scene, they're not just taking him out of Africa, but they're taking the Africa out of him. So they want to take his name away from him. They want to take his language away from him. We don't speak that Guinea man talk, only Virginian talk. They take his clothes away from him, because we see, again, in the beginning in Jufure, that they have a really specific way that they dress with these bright colors and these like head wraps, and they take his clothes away from him, they take his food away from him, they end up taking this music away from him and culturally appropriating it into this, and it's the song that belongs to everyone in the South, and it's played all throughout the South. They're not just taking him out of Africa, they're taking the Africa out of him, and they're breaking him to make him into a slave, because again, you can't buy a slave, you can't just tell someone they're a slave, you have to make a slave. It's a reflection of what's happening in society right now. This is not a docile, meek, slave, beat down narrative. This is not that. This is a really honest look at something that happened and how, and again, it draws clear parallels between what's happening today. Beating people, intimidating them with violence, killing them, murder, Sandra Bland, Khalif Browder, who they locked up in fucking prison, and then they just, our bad, let him go, and he fucking killed himself, These are just, it's the same tactics, fucking Gestapo tactics used against black people that have just evolved over time, to the point where it's not a physical slavery in 2016, but a mental one, where they're still, again, trying to make us slaves, the way that you attempt to break a person that you feel is inferior to you, to make them feel that they don't matter, to make them feel that their lives don't matter, It's really important to witness these parallels. It's really important to witness these parallels, and I think it's very important for that reason alone to watch Roots, is to like watch it and like witness these parallels. So by the end, Kunta has accepted the name, but he basically only accepts the name so they'll stop beating him. And then Fiddler comes out, and it's Christmas Day, right? Like, it's Christmas Day. It's Christmas fucking Day. And we also see some clear parallels between, they give the slaves the day off on Christmas, and they give them presents, and they make them, associate all these nice, happy feelings with white Jesus and Christmas. And there was some serious Christianity shade thrown throughout this whole entire series. Like, I'm not even gonna front. Like, there was mad shit that I was like, yo, they're throwing mad shade on white Jesus and Christianity. So I know all of y'all that fucking hate organized religion and hate Christianity are gonna, like, love this shit. Like, you really should watch it. Because they, like, beat him on Christmas, on the day that they try to, like, tell the slaves to, like, be thankful for what they have and all this other shit. And then they, like, force them to, like, watch them beat him on Christmas. Again, mental torture in addition to physical torture and degradation, to break you mentally, physically, spiritually, mind and body, to make you a slave. And so it's like snowing, and Fiddler's like putting salve on Kunta's back, because his back is like fucked up clearly, and he's like, and Fiddler basically says to him, even though you just like said that your name is Toby, remember who you really are, like, promise me to never forget your true name in your heart. Like, the plantation is not your home, it's just where you have to be. Like, you have a home. Like, you have a home. And that really, really struck me, because I feel like that's something that we as a people need to remember now to this day. Like, all this shit that they say about us, that we're this and we're that, and we're fucking trash, and we're fucking welfare queens, and we never gonna be shit, and we're fucking not respectable, and we're ghetto, and we're this and we're that. All that shit is just names that they put on us, just like Toby is a name that they fucking try to put on us, you know? We should know we have to know who we are in our hearts. We have to remember our true selves in our hearts and work towards manifesting that, because this state that anybody is in right now of, again, poverty, of fucked up situations, that's a place where they put you because you're black. But that's, like, not your home. That's not where you belong. You gotta, like, know in your heart, like, you the shit. And you're magic. You're a magical person for even being here right now in 2016. You know, like I always say. And that was at the end. That was, like, the closing. So I thought it was amazing. It really, really struck me. They showed a people with agency. They showed the whole first half of it took place in Jufure, so we saw like a healthy, happy, regal Mandinka people. Again, I would totally watch a movie or series just on that alone. So if y'all want to like start a petition for some shit, please start a petition for that. I've seen people talk about the representation of the women, which I thought was interesting. I feel like the representation of the women in this first episode was actually really good, and that it fell short in later episodes. We see a lot of women kind of take agency for themselves. There's a scene that a lot of people have been talking about where a girl kind of like offers herself to Kunta Kinte, like, she says like, oh, if you want me, you can have me. And people are like, well, who is she? And, like, why would she do that? Like, it's flat and it's pointless. And I feel like I disagree. I feel like people are not delving deeply enough into it. I felt like her offering herself to him is an act of will, and that displays a sense of agency. Like, she wasn't being raped. She wasn't being assaulted. She was stating that she would give herself to him willingly. That was a choice. That was something powerful for a person who was seen as powerless. And we see other female slaves making those types of choices and having those senses of agency throughout, the whole episode. Like Jenna, who's being sexually assaulted by the captain, there's a scene where she tries to like throw herself overboard. That's a choice. Like, I'm not going to take this anymore. I'd rather die. She tries to like throw herself overboard. She's like taking agency. The scenes where the men are working in tandem with the women to storm, the front, and they're passing them information and they're passing them weapons. Those are choices. They're making choices. They're not just sitting there like, but we don't know what's going to happen, so we're not going to do shit. They're making choices. They're having a sense of agency. They're doing something. And I think, again, now, 2016, similar, a lot of people have kind of adopted this sense of apathy and this idea of like, well, I can't do anything because it's going to be worse for me, which is also something that the series plays with in later episodes. And it's amazing to see men and women, especially people that have been enslaved, still making these choices, still having this sense of agency, despite knowing what could happen. That is important, really important. And I thought it was excellent that they showed that. I just really loved this first episode. I mean, like I said, I love the whole series, but like we're talking about this first episode. I just really loved this first episode, and it meant a lot to me. I'm really glad I watched it. And again, even if you don't want to watch the whole thing, like I definitely recommend at least watching the first half in Jufure because it was amazing. So yeah, Roots recap review. Hopefully I didn't have too many spoilers. Sorry if I did. I know this is so long, but it was like 2 hours. Like, come on. Sorry, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments. There will be links in the description box as always. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace.